In an ever-changing world full of AI and doing things as quick as possible, where people are losing their attention spans, we need to focus on identity. On today's podcast, I have the pleasure of welcoming on Chris Telfer, one of the co-founders of Red Door Collaborative, an agency based in the United States. On today's podcast, we talk about the missing identity of businesses all throughout the world who essentially just copy and pasting each other, and how AI is essentially cheating people out of quality and authenticity. Hey, also, I've got a mic. Level up before episode 100, right? If you enjoy this podcast, share it to a friend.
As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Joe Testori, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy.
Chris, pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here, Joe.
Chris, I'm curious, what does growth look like to you?
Oh man, that's a good question. When I think of growth, maybe it's because when I was younger, I had a lot of growing pains. I think of perseverance and oftentimes the uncomfortability that comes with growth. Oftentimes growth sounds fun. It sounds exciting, but it comes with adjustment. It comes with some pain. But I think overall it makes you more resilient. And so I can say personally and honestly right now, I'm going through some personal growth and development and also within my business as well. So that's what growth looks like to me right now.
Looking at the business side of things, and you can delve into as much as you want on a personal sphere. When you talk about growth in that capacity, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think whenever I think of growth, I think of scale. How can you take something that you've worked so hard on for such a long time, because we're a quality-based organization. And so how do you maintain quality at scale? So when I think of growth, it's the element of not just growing for the sake of growing, but growing purposefully, and growing in a way where you can maintain the things that made you great in the beginning, the reason why customers are saying yes and not losing out on those things, right? You're building a personal brand, and that's really, really important. So I think when we're growing and when we're going through growth within the business, I'm thinking about how can we maintain the things that made us successful and not erode away and grow for the sake of growing.
So that's such an important point that I would love the audience and us to listen to. But there's so many people that they develop this fabric in their business that got them to whatever level, especially in service-based businesses. Or let's say you run a restaurant and then you franchise or you license, however it may be, the imprint of what you've done the first time round is so idiosyncratic to the people that you work with that it's exceptional. For you, how do you keep that identity, that the close-knit relationships you've had with your starter clients, and keep that with scale?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. A mentor of mine a long time ago he said, grow by multiplication, not by addition. And I remember thinking at the time, okay, what do you mean by that? And he said, don't grow simply by just adding people onto your team. Grow in a way where you can multiply yourself in other people. And so I got the concept of at the time, but if you notice a lot of great companies in which we follow, there's two things that stand out to me. One, I'm more loyal to brands that rectify or make a mistake right, not the ones that are perfect, right? That builds trust in there's a personal connection established with that. But I feel like those brands do a really great job because someone has really established what the core mission, identity, and vision of that company is. And so if you can establish that culturally within your team, you're going to multiply your vision, your directives, and why you got into business in the first place with other human beings. It's really hard to do, but I do feel like culture is so important. So we meticulously go through a lot of processes when we hire, and we do our best to maintain that culture. So when I'm not in the room, they carry the gauntlet of who and what and why Red Door is. and functions and exists for those clients, right? And so it takes longer, in my opinion, to do that, but the growing pains, if you will, are worth it in the end, because then you can really multiply yourself in other people, and they begin to own that identity in and of themselves.
And just for the benefit of our listeners, could you just give a quick synopsis as to who you are, what you guys do?
Sure. My name is Chris Telfer. I'm one of the managing partners of Red Door Collaborative. It is a marketing consultancy, talent augmentation services, and well, here, let me start again. um, my name is Chris Telfer, and I'm the managing partner of Red Door Collaborative. So it is a marketing consultancy, staff augmentation, and services based business.
Cool. That's a good summary just for people who are thinking, hey, what exactly does Chris do? So
Yeah.
just looking at that, if you were to map back to from the birth of the business to today, how have you grown the business? What's been the secret sauce? Has it been referrals, building connections, or have you had an outbound strategy that's helped you get there?
That's a really good question. I feel every strategy comes from someone sitting down and thinking through what makes them unique. What is your differentiator? Who are you? Right? There's that really kind of phrase that every great business in America has been built in a garage, right? Whether it's been Disney or Apple, these companies, even Jeff Bezos with Amazon, there's this element of the ethos of they had an energy and an acceleration and got other people to join on board. And so there was an idea of what Red Door is and what it stood for. And it mattered to my wife and I, who started this business together, to establish something that we were proud of that told a story. And so for us, when I look for the connecting thread of where the business came from, even what the steps that took me to starting the business and having the courage to do that, it all boils down to story. That was the most important thing. And that has been the thread throughout my career, even before I started this business, of how do I tell a really great story? I think we're tribal beings. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to be a part of a good story. We want to tell a good story. We want to hear great stories. And so for me, it's been from hiring the first employee to even hiring now. How do I tell a really great story, not only to my customers, but to my future employees, because they want to be a part of that, because people work for people, not for companies, right? So I think for me, as we've started the process of what is Red Door, even in and of itself, I wanted a brand that effectively had its own story and narrative within it, right? So even our name, Red Door Collaborative, red is the color of passion, right? My wife and I, we're a diverse business. We're Latino, Native American, it's America, we're a mixing pot, but we are registered diverse by the ownership. And so that red stands for the passion that we have for what we do. Doors are something that have always infatuated me. I lived in southern Spain for a while. We go back and forth, and you're passing doors that are 12, 1500 years old. And I love what a door represented and stood for: invitation, opportunity to step beyond a world in your own. And then the word collaborative is very much an element of bad input equals bad output. And in order for us to do a really great job, the customer needs to endeavor with us. They need to come to the table, and we need to collaborate together. So even in that self of what Red Door Collaborative is and stands for, I feel like I've been telling that story over and over again. And sometimes it can feel overly repetitive. Sometimes you're wondering if people are listening. But when I see the fruit over time of customers latching on to who and what we are and what we do well, and people wanting to join the team and starting to capture that vision as well, to me, that's been the thread from the beginning, is story. How do I tell other customer stories? How do I tell our story really well? And how do I get other people to be a part of that story?
To your point, and I've had a few conversations around story and storytelling, and you've got excellent storytellers like Donald Miller,
Oh, yeah.
and it kind of intertwines into a thread that I've been thinking about. And I'm going to throw this question over to you. Why do you think not enough small businesses voice their story? Because what I love is when you go to a really quaint Italian restaurant, that is 4 generations old, was opened in the 60s, that was first opened by Nonna, and it makes you feel as though every time you eat that pasta or you pick up that garlic bread, there's a deeper feeling to it, even though it could just be the same as any Italian restaurant down the road. But storytelling, I find, gives an experience to businesses. It gets people emotionally invested. That's what storytelling does. It gets people intertwined. It gets them to think back, use their vivid memory of thinking about, oh, this is what it looked like. Everyone can paint that picture. I painted a picture of a very small Italian lady, probably about 4'11", who was originally from Puglia or somewhere, and was just walking down these ramshackled towns, these roads, and then eventually she came over to America. That's the story that I made. So, just the question to you is, why do you think not enough businesses voice their story the same way you've just mentioned there?
That's a good question. I can only
Hypothesize.
guess as to why, but oftentimes I think there's this hustle culture, right? Of the formula. And you see it all the time on Instagram. I have to get off Instagram sometimes because I either feel behind or I feel behind, right? Like this element of do this, do this, do this. I feel oftentimes it's get a business plan and get really good about, what specific need you're filling, and then get out there and sell, right? And oftentimes people are telling about what their product is and what it does, but there's no why. Why did they make that product or service? And I think because we have a heart for story and we're tribal creatures, it's how we, for thousands of years, right, around a fire, telling stories, writing stories, drawing pictures. I think that is just in us. If we don't feel that we can identify with that story, and I think that's what happens with story that brings humanity to the table. But if we don't feel that we can connect, then there's no real heart or foundation in that component. And even from the element of marketing, right? Like if Disney comes out with a new movie and they are doing a ton of marketing, and you see it everywhere. You see it at Taco Bell or McDonald's, and you see billboards and ads. If I'm really good friends with you, Joe, and you go see that movie, and then you and I talk one on one, and you say, "Oh, I didn't like it. It was bad. Whatever." I'm probably not going to go see that movie. So millions, if not billions, of marketing dollars are spent to that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a conversation one on one that we're having, right? And so that's just how we're wired. So if we don't feel connected, and if we don't feel that we can trust, because trust begots trust, then it fails. And so I think there is an element of this hustle culture of the what and the how, but there's really, I think, in a big element, a missing of the why. Why are you doing what you're doing, right? I understand you have a sound business plan, seems like a good product, but we tend to latch on to things that we know are giving back to their communities, that came from a hardworking family, the restaurant that you're speaking of that has 4 generations of pasta making. We love that element and we want to invest in that story and we want to perpetuate and continue that story on. That is the only thing that I could think of, is oftentimes there's such a speed and acceleration, and you need to get angel investors and private equity, and you need to build this thing and scale it and go, right? There's such a speed to it, right? But oftentimes I feel that the companies we work with, maybe they've had some success, but now they're struggling with their identity because they never really solidified that from the get-go. So they're kind of having a little bit of an identity crisis, right? And when you start making money and funds and start growing and things of that nature, if you don't have that foundational element, in my opinion, you can be swayed in a lot of directions that deter you from the very reason you started doing what you're doing, right? So,
You touched upon identity for businesses. For you, why do you feel these established businesses have lost their identity? Where do you think that stems from?
you know, from the beginning when we were talking, I think oftentimes I think we want to be led. in a lot of ways. Like when we walk, even when we walk into a restaurant, it's this element of we want someone to help invite us, take us to our table, and lead us. We want to be led in different rooms, right? And so when I feel an owner comes into a place and there's an energy and an acceleration, they're garnering and they're attracting specific people either to their business and their products and service offerings, or they're attracting staff to help propel those business offerings. You see a lot of identity crisis when CEOs are swapped out or acquisitions happen because now there's a new vision and there's new mandates, or there's a separate identity, or the business scales so quickly that maybe they were able to establish what the overall business plan and structure is, but they haven't been able to convey that story. And that takes time. So I think oftentimes the companies that I've noticed that have grown really, really well, there's a company in Denver. I won't say the name of it to be private, but they've grown and done really well. Is when you walk into their offices, they have their mission on the wall, right? You have to pass it every single day. And it reminds the staff who they are, why they're doing what they're doing, and why they're there every single day. So there's a heart element involved in it, not just a, did you hit your KPIs or your OKRs, right? Or did you get your bonus? But there's a currency that is a heart currency that goes beyond monetary value and, what their IPO is doing that day. So I think there's this heart currency of if the leader moves on or an acquisition happens or you're not telling the mission, the identity, the vision, the core element of who you are, you can't expect others to just capture it with a net. You have to be the one seeding it all the time. And that is something I'm learning. I have to continue to seed this vision constantly as this business grows. When it grew, it was a baby and it was learning to crawl. I feel like we're an adolescent right now, right? I feel like we're getting some more freedom and anonymity, and we're making mistakes and we're doing a great job. But there's this element of remember who you are, remember your identity. So
You mentioned you're in a season of scaling now, growing the business. Why is now the time to scale? Why is now the time to go from being an adolescent to a young adult?
that's a good question. I think it's twofold. One, we've been in business for about 12 years now. So have lots of cuts and bruises, have learned a lot about people management. People, like I mentioned before, people work for people, not for companies. So I think being able to hire the right people, right? There's a lot of things I'm not good at, but I think one of the things I am good at is building a team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've learned a lot about that over time. I think we've gotten better about what we're good at and what we're not good at. Instead of casting the net too wide, I think we've really honed down on these are the things we do really, really well. And it's taken time and humility, right, to double down on those things. So I think the amount of time of being in business and learning and understanding it cuts and bruises. Two, we're on the precipice of one of the biggest technology disruptors we have ever seen with AI, right? And so I think the last massive technology disruptor that we got was the internet, right? And so there were news articles even about it. The internet's a fad, things of that nature, right? And so I think we can dare say even why we're doing this podcast is that the internet connected people in a new way. And then you had social media and all these other elements. But all that to say is the internet was a massive technology disruptor, right? And it changed the way we do business. It changed the way consumers consume. It changed the way we interact with businesses forever. And I believe AI is in a very similar trajectory. I think it's going to um, make a lot of, I think some businesses are going to go down as a result of AI, but I think it's going to create more opportunity than it's actually going to get rid of. And that's hard for me to even to say because I can go into existential conversations about AI and things of nature, but in the in the train of business, I'm just noticing massive investments across the board into AI and companies adopting it, and it really is the wild west right now. I think a lot of people are trying to understand how do I get faster, how do I get cheaper, how can I augment these services, how can I do this in X, Y, and Z, Y. So I believe that this is a time for us to double down, leverage these technology and services along with our 12 years of understanding and growth to help us grow even further. And in a way that doesn't undermine who we are, but capitalizes on that even more.
You mentioned just before we jumped on here, AI agents. What sort of stuff are you implementing within your business to help you grow?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think right now I'm looking at a lot of efficiencies in terms of process workflow, right? We have an in-house creative team, so we have disciplinary leads. So I have a lead for animation and video, a lead for uh, graphic design and visual design, and then a lead for editorial content, both technical, non-technical. And so one of the things we've always prided ourselves in is doing things custom, right? Well, with AI, I think that's eroding a lot of those pieces. So it's really trying to mix HI, human intelligence, and marry that with AI. And so how can we not erode the custom high touch point services that we offer and leverage these tools? So I think a lot of it, what we're looking at is process improvement, right? And being able to scale the services that we do. So an example would be, let's say we're doing a lot of short form content. Can we create an agent where we're creating a template, that information is entered in, it can gather, do the research, basically help take away a lot of the busy time from our writers so they can spend more time doing what they love and that they're good at writing, right? So I think it's helping them razor cut even better, more, and being able to filter through a lot of information that would have taken hours of painstaking research and time, and allowing them to collate that information, consolidate it in one specific place, put in prompts, and be able to get that information substantially faster, and thus help us scale and maintain quality, right? That is just one specific example of how we're using these LLMs to build agents and then processes that we don't have to manually build every single time, right? And so it's a lot of trial and error right now, but that's one great example of how we're maintaining quality while helping to scale at the same exact time.
And what are you most excited about with regards to the disruption of artificial intelligence over the next 12 months within your industry?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I'm excited to see what's possible, right? And so I think number one, even training right now, if you go out and you try to find AI courses, there's lots on Coursera or MS Learn or Pluralsight, like everywhere. There's tons of courses, but I'm not seeing a lot of depth in these courses. Either they're very, very high level of just what LLMs are and what they do, or they're very, very, very technical. And there's not a lot of reviews coming out of these courses. So I think everyone is innovating so quickly. I saw a statistic, and I'll probably butcher it, but I think it came out of one of the Ivy League schools that 87% of all AI projects fail, right?
I've seen 90%.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
very
it could
similar.
even be higher than that. Now the pessimistic brain could look at that and say, "Wow, that's a high fail rate." From the opposite angle, look at the investment and look at the adoption. It means a lot of industries are investing time, money, and resources into AI to help their businesses thrive. And you're going to see kind of cause and effect, right? And so you're going to see a lot of shakeup in the industry, and that's to be expected. But what I'm most excited about really is you don't know what you don't know. I'm learning, and my team is learning how to use this technology, but I think there are ways in which people are going to adopt it, utilize it, and leverage it that we couldn't even fathom before. So I love the element of the unknown and what's possible, because right now we're just starting. I feel like we're just dipping our toes in the AI pool, if you will. And there's a depth to it that I think we don't even know what's possible yet.
Well, I think if you really want to link this back, this is similar to the invention of the light bulb by Thomas Edison. And if you look at the success rate of what he did, the classic example is that it took him 1,000 attempts to get the light bulb right.
Right.
Therefore, he was wrong 99.9% of the time. But look at how everything's powered now. It's through light bulbs, through light. And you need to be, when you're at such an early stage of whatever is being done, the internet was not made in 1 year. The internet was first fabricated. It was first imagined in the 60s and officially launched in, I believe it was 1993, but they had computers before then. So if you look at the evolution of any technological innovation or revolution, because that's what the internet was, it wasn't just an innovation, it was a revolution. Artificial intelligence is revolution, and machine learning and anything that we're doing right now is just massive revolutions and changes. And this is arguably the biggest technological shift in businesses that's ever happened. That's my view.
I agree with you. I mean, to your example, here's a good example that goes back to the question that you asked, right? Thomas Edison with the light bulb. He was very high centered on direct current, right? Which was powerful, but it didn't have the long range that he wanted to be able to build an infrastructure. It wasn't until his protege, Nikola Tesla, started experimenting with alternate current. And alternate current was chaotic. It seemed unstable, but it could travel faster, and farther, right? That's why we have transformers. It takes an alternate current, transforms it into direct current into your household. So I don't think Thomas Edison even fathomed what was possible with direct or alternate current. Someone else took his invention, his years of research time and failure, to your point, and did something unfathomable. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I think is going to happen and continually happen with AI. I think everyone is using an LLM these days. There's been a massive adoption of ChatGPT. I think everyone is leveraging and utilizing it. But there are so many tools out there that are leveraging backend infrastructure of these LLMs, whether it's Gemini or ChatGPT, which is based in OpenAI. But there's a lot of experimentation happening right now, and that makes me excited.
Well, the next real big evolution in possibly 15, 20 years' time will be quantum computing. And it's around now, but the amount of energy that it takes to use anything that's based on quantum computing, there's a lot of ethical considerations with regards to AI at the moment, with how much energy is used. And if you
Yes.
compare that to just everything that's doing to the environment, but then if we look at everything, and artificial intelligence first was invented, or it was coined in the 60s. So if we think about it, it's had to take 60 years to get to where it is today, and it only burst onto the scene within the last 3 years. I think it was November, December 2022. So it always seems to me, and this is more of a conversation to have when you're sitting down having a beer, just going through different conspiracy theories. But it feels to me to an extent as though there's so much information and tech that's held in the ether of these governments, and they're just deciding when they want to release it to the public.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the Wright brothers, right? Was it 1913 that they flew, right? Was it at around that time? You'll have to fact check that. But we landed on the moon in 1969,
Yeah,
right? Like, the think about that. I mean, even radar, weather. We use radar for weather now, right? Back in the day, they didn't know what those things were. They called them ghosts. These things would appear on the blip because they were trying to find planes and have energy bounce off and reflect back and pick up on the radar. And someone went outside and looked up and said, "Oh my God, that's a cloud. We can use this technology, and it's reflecting off the water droplets and the ice particles in the air. We can see clouds." Right? Like, no one knew that. They called them ghosts for a long time. So there's this element of, we forget even horse and buggy over 100 years ago to the Wright brothers trying to fly, and now we have commercialized space with Elon Musk company and Bezos company, SpaceX, and what's the other one? I can't think of it right now, but um,
Virgin Galactic,
Air Virgin, or whatever,
Galactic, I think it's called.
whatever Katy Perry went up in, and got some really really fun PR out of that. But to that point, you're absolutely right, and innovation happens very quickly, and I think it's, to your point, there's a lot of things about this. When I talk about AI, I think the thing that really interests me is it starts to unravel tons of different conversations about raising kids to how to use it personally and ethically. And you're absolutely right. It's Microsoft and Meta just signed nuclear deals. That's their biggest issue right now is one, the quantum computers and the technology available. Do they have it? I think they do. But the real issue is power. That's the real issue right now. We don't have the grid in the States to be able to power something at that magnitude, sustain that power. And you're seeing things in the news, such as a city in Texas whose residents are put on a water restriction, and they're asking why. And it's because one of the data centers used a majority of the water. And the citizens are like, excuse me? Why are we on a water restriction? Because this AI data center used all the water. So there are power constraints, and it's not that great for the environment. It's similar to mining Bitcoin, right? And that was one
Yeah.
of the big takeaways is the environmental impact of that, right? There's a really great documentary called 180 Degrees South, and it goes into the dams that are created in South America, outside of Ecuador and Argentina. And there was a whole movement by the Argentinian population called Sin Represas, which means without dams, specifically into the video game industry and the amount of power that's needed. And all these dams started appearing along the coast, which is detrimental. And these are things we just don't see and hear about at all, right? So there are causalities as a result of this technology. And my hope is that we think about the impact before we just do it, right? Um, I was just talking with a friend the other day with all of these reboots with Jurassic Park, and there's a line, the Jeff Goldblum line, and he says, you wanted to do it and you did it, and but you never thought, should we do this, right? And so it's this element of it's here, it has arrived. I think a lot of companies, ours included, especially that really value people, we're a people centric organization. We love, custom work. There's a threat. It's like, is this coming for our jobs? Um, the element of responsible AI, how are we using it? And I feel if AI is humanity's kind of like child, right? Like in a lot of ways, like our creation, we're going to influence how this thing grows and impacts and those sort of things. And my hope is that we don't just look at an opportunity to make a quick buck and scale it without thinking about the responsibility of what this is. Like it, that is so important in my belief. And I don't believe turning a blind eye and just rejecting it is a good move either. I think people that have ethics and want to see humanity be better, they need to be influencing this technology. They need to be a part of it and maybe even setting policy and thinking about how we're using it ethically and responsibly, not just from a technical standpoint, but also the cause and effect of environmental effects and so on and so forth. So again, it's AI is a can of worms, and it can go to a lot of different directions. But in the business sense, I see good, but then there's a lot of downside too. Social media is a good example of that, right? Um, Social media was. I remember being in college, and Facebook was only offered to college students and getting a personal invitation, right? And then it was weird to see like Tom's mom on Facebook. You're like, what? Right? And it opened up to everybody. Um, but I think we can agree that one of the areas of social media right now is that overconsumption of it, increases depression and anxiety, and it has negative side effects too. And there's really great books, such as The Anxious Generation, that talks about the detrimental effects on young people, specifically girls before the age of 16, and how this technology can really wire their brain in such a way that makes them more prone to depression and anxiety because of comparison and these realities that aren't really true in that social media world. So that's just one small way of not really knowing the effects until a little bit later, right? Even though there have been some positive things about it too. So there are going to be positives and negatives associated with it for sure.
Absolutely. Chris, where can people find you and what's next for you?
That's a good question. You can go to our website, reddoorcollaborative.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And then I also write songs, so you can just search my name. At the end of the day, I just want to encourage people to sync out people and mentors in your life to help support you. You can't do it alone. I think America over celebrates the self made man or woman, right? And when I look at, just like I spoke earlier about all the people that did great businesses in their garages, it took a team of people. It took a team of people united to one core vision that helped something become a reality, right? And so, yeah, you could find me there.
Appreciate you, Chris.
You as well.